Hello, everyone. My name is Monica Cornejo. I am a doctoral candidate in the Department of Communication at the University of California, Santa Barbara. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my presentation. I am very excited to share a little bit about myself as well as Latino and Latinos in higher education. Particularly, I'm going to be focusing on my experience of being undocumented, being Latina, and being a doctoral candidate in the Department of Communication. So let's go ahead and get started. So in today's presentation, I'm going to be talking to you all about my story towards earning a doctorate, my immigration story, my life in the United States, my educational journey, and my PhD program and the center of my research. I'm also going to be sharing with all of you, what goals I hope to accomplish with this career for myself and for my undocumented community. And I guess before I will continue, I guess I just want to clarify for folks who don't know what a doctoral candidate is, it's a person who's about to earn a PhD. For me, this involves completing a dissertation, which is a large project, research project particularly, which I hope to complete by June of next year. And so at that time, I will have become a doctor, hopefully. And so my migration story, so I immigrated into the United States from Jalisco, Mexico, which is, a small, rather small town in the middle of Mexico. There's approximately 24,000 people, and like many folks, I immigrated with my parents for a better future, for a better life. Being in Mexico, of course, had its challenges. This involved, paying for our basic needs, food, water, and other basic necessities that in Mexico were hard to obtain. But here, of course, they are much easier. And I immigrated particularly when I was 6 years old in 2001. And like many folks who migrate, or for many folks who know of those who migrate, when I migrated, I was confused and afraid. I remember begging and crying to my mom to, return to Mexico and go back because I just did not like living in the United States at the beginning. But we adjusted, eventually. But I do remember that at the beginning of my, my stay, immigration in the United States, the adjustment was hard. I remember, having to translate for my parents as a young child and, being the middle person between adults and trying to tell my parents of what somebody else was trying to say. So there was that. There was a role reversal where I started to become more of an adult as a young child. But there was also a lot of experiences, at least in my part, of discrimination. It was omnipresent. It was everywhere. One of the earlier memories I have of discrimination was when I was young and trying to learn English. So it was in elementary school, and I remember that the other children would laugh at me when I said the color yellow. And at that age, and up until recently, actually, I did not know why. And then one day as an adult, it dawned on me that I was saying yellow, like jello, like the, gelatina, like the food that we eat, not the color. And so thinking back at it, I finally realized that that is why they were mocking me. And, that's still, it's gotten better, I think, as my accent has lessened, but it's still there. And so now as an adult, I always, I'm proud and laugh at the same time. So if you don't laugh, there's not much, the depression will get to us and the sadness will get to us. But I like to laugh at these circumstances. And now I can say the, jello yellow. So I'm able to finally do that. Another instance of discrimination that I experienced and that I'm sure that others like myself experienced was being stereotyped as a certain type of immigrant. So I remember one of my teachers when I was in elementary school would say, you have farm working hands, you're going to be really good out in the fields. And for me, that was always shocking. And at first, I was proud to a certain extent for that message because it meant I was hardworking. But it wasn't really until I started critically thinking about what it meant uh, that somebody was labeling me as, this hardworking farm worker, that I realized that that is the expectations that others have of us to continue and work out in the fields and, stay in those low status positions. And although I admire very much, the work that farm workers do, my father is in agriculture, he's a dairy farm worker, the fact that somebody's stereotyping you to that position, for me and for others, of course, now we know through research, this means that they have no faith, no expectations of us to continue on to positions of power, higher education, and business and corporations. So again, those were some of the experiences that I had that I didn't realize what they meant until I started to learn more in college and later on in the university. And so, it was these experiences of discrimination that really deterred me from wanting to seek higher education. I remember being like, if this is how it's going to be, if these are the expectations that teachers are going to have about us, I don't want to go. I just want to finish high school and that's it. I'm going to go out, work, make money, be done. But it was really my mom at the early stages of my education that pushed me to continue and really instilled in me that education is one of the few ways to gain social mobility, not only personally, but for our family as well, but also change the narrative. And I think that's very important to me. And, if you're thinking or considering about going on to higher education, this is something that you should consider, that really seeking higher education changes the views that others have about community. I'm sure that all of you are familiar with the stereotypes that surround being Latinos and being undocumented. And so this is really a way in which I found that I could throw it back at them and change the narrative and be like, no, yes, I have hardworking hands, but I'm also gonna, push myself, obtain this education, and change the narrative for others so that others can also be in these places as well as me. And so after high school, I continued on to Santa Rosa Junior College and Sonoma State University. And it was during, these processes, these progressions in education that I started to really see the impacts that being undocumented had on college attainment. I started to see that very few of my undocumented Latinos who began the education journey with me continued on to school and continued to graduate. And I began to question why. Why does this happen? And of course, now we know that this occurs for various reasons. Systemic barriers that limit the amount of resources that we obtain to get into these positions and continue on and advance. Of course, there's also discrimination and rejection from our society that convinces us that we're not smart enough, that we're not bright enough to continue. And so these are some of the reasons, and the impact that this has in our attainment is very sad. And, I hope to change that, but here are some of the findings. So according to a 2015 report on Latinos and Latinas through the education pipeline, this report by Perez Huber et al. Found that Latinos are the group or the ethnic racial group with the lowest graduation rates. So, for example, they investigated the educational pipeline rates among Latinos, whites, Asians, Blacks, Native Americans, and as you can see on your screen, these are the percentages of different races, different ethnicities that graduate and obtain different degrees, beginning from high school all the way to a doctorate. As you can see, Latinos were at the lowest of every single category. And to me, this is sad. This is, there's a profound anger for wanting to change this, because the impacts that those barriers that I mentioned earlier that discrimination is having is very noticeable. As you can see, of course, whites are the highest among all of the other racial groups on the screen, but Latinos are in last place. And, it's not only an issue of race and ethnicity. When we include immigration status in the mix to, to this, the impacts of obtaining a higher education, the numbers are even smaller. So among this, particularly looking among Latinos and Latinas with different statuses, non-citizens, for example, undocumented immigrants, have the lowest graduation success rates. And so here in the chart, you will see 3 different categories. So US-born Latino, Latinas, naturalized Latinos, and non-citizens. And as you can see, non-citizen have the lowest. So if I were to place myself in this, and you can place yourself as well in this graph, depending on where you're at, you can see where your position is with regards to these, statistics. I'm at a 0.1% to 0.09%. So not even 1% of Latinas who will eventually earn a doctorate. And again, seeing these numbers, seeing these outcomes of how much we are impacted and the effect that this has on the community really is pushing me to try to make a difference. And so as an undocumented Latina, that is my goal. And, it is to make a difference, and to do so, I remember as an undergraduate, I got involved in various research opportunities because for me, I saw research as one of those tangible ways in which I can change the narrative of the impacts that undocumented immigrants are experiencing in the US to try to create resources. So this involved, becoming a US Wagner Scholar and eventually going for the summer to a summer research opportunity program at the University of Michigan. And, although I did these opportunities, I also acknowledge that I didn't do it by myself. So, having undocumented allies, I had various mentors. Rafael Vasquez Guzman is one of those mentors who, made a huge difference. And I share this because I want to ensure that for folks who, who want to continue and pursuing higher education, or, maybe you want to go to business, or, whatever other opportunity you want to pursue to make a difference for yourself and for your community, I want to make sure that you understand that allies and mentors are very important. So asking questions, reaching out to folks like myself who might know how to navigate the systems is a very, important way that will help you also reach those goals. And so, that's been my, my journey thus far. And because of that, because of my allies, because of my mentors, and because of this need, that I have to want to change the narrative, I was accepted into various PhD programs in 2017. And I decided to, take the offer from UC Santa Barbara because of the research that is being conducted in my department, particularly working with my mentor, Dr. Jennifer Cam, in the Department of Communication on the ways in which undocumented immigrants are impacted in various areas of their life because of their immigration status. So particularly, I use a communication lens, particularly using a communication lens, my research focuses on the impact that an undocumented status has on immigrants' identity, family, well-being. So this includes mental and, psychological, mental, and physical well-being, as well as empowerment. So, we focus on the barriers, but we also focus on the coping and the resiliency and the thriving that our community has. So that's the central focus of my research. And so my goals really with this research is to help create resources that reduce our community's barriers. And this is, this is also my goal is to help to increase the number of undocumented immigrants who pursue higher education. So as I mentioned earlier, mentorship is a very important um, aspect of my life. And I try to mentor my students who are also undocumented, who are also first generation Latinos. So, I say this to, say if you have any questions, of course, you're more than welcome to feel free and reach out and ask me questions about what it is like to be in a PhD program. And my final goal is to inform others of our lived experiences. So it changes the narrative really when you have an undocumented immigrants doing research on other undocumented communities and being able to think in a different way than people who don't have our shared identity. So, these are some of the three goals that I hope to, continue on engaging and doing and fulfilling as I move towards my, graduate program and eventually as a professor. And I really try to meet these goals in various ways. The first one is, of course, writing academic journals, peer-reviewed articles more particularly, and publishing them. So as you can see on the screen, these are two manuscripts that I've co-written with my advisor and another professor in the Department of Communication. One of them is looking at the ways in which DACA recipients ascribe or self-label themselves as undocumented, dreamer, illegal, and so on, and the ways in which others impose certain identities to them. And then the other article is looking at the ways in which undocumented immigrants learned about their immigration status and what the process of family disclosure looks like and the impacts that this had for their identities. So if you want to read these articles, feel free to email me and I'm happy to share them. In addition to writing manuscripts, I am also the co-founder, along with my mentor, for a website called the Communication and Empowerment Collaborative. And so as you'll see on the screen, these are some of the infographics and brief reports that we've created to try to bridge that informational gap that exists in our community. So, these infographics are directed towards allies, but as well as undocumented college students and undocumented immigrants to try to explain to them some of the barriers, some of the ways in which, their immigration status influences their lives. And again, our goal in doing this is to try to reduce that informational gap, as I mentioned earlier, but doing so in a language that is attainable to, lay people. Academia can be very much a gatekeeping institution, such that academic journals are only read by, a few select. But with this, we're trying to reduce that and try to make sure that our findings are also shared by others. Mentorship, as I mentioned, is one of the other ways in which we try to reduce that gap. There's a quote that I really like that is particularly used among Black queer feminists called, "We climb as we lift." And so for me, that's very important, that I am also helping others who haven't had the opportunities or haven't had the access of learning of academic institutions, the way they work, and who hope to also get a PhD. So that's something that I've also been involved in. I've also been involved in writing, about our experiences in various forms. So one of them is writing a children's book, and that's The Adventures of Juanito, the Undocumented Boy, available on Amazon. It talks about, Juanito, who was an undocumented immigrant, and the story of him coming into the United States and some of the experiences that he's faced because of this. And this book touches upon, discrimination, acculturation, as well as, trying to normalize what it means to be undocumented. And then I've also written a poetry book, again, trying to, bridge that gap of creation, and also trying to demonstrate through my lived experiences that, there are various ways that we can hustle and we can succeed. And these are just some of the ways that I thought would be good for us to do and share our stories. So I hope that this presentation, if anything you can take away from this presentation is that I am a very strong believer that education is one of the, I don't want to say golden ticket, but really I think it is one of the primary ways in which we can gain social mobility, not only individually and for our family, but also for our undocumented group, and change the narratives of what it means to be undocumented, and change the stereotypes and combats and reduce our limitations or barriers, and change policies and really turn the impossible into a possibility. And so, I hope that, if you have any questions, of course, I'm happy to answer them, but I hope that you can think about that and about what education means for you, and what you hope to accomplish too in the future. And I will end by thanking you for listening to this presentation, but also welcoming you to email me if you have any questions, if you if you want to pursue PhD or graduate school, and you want to learn more. I'm always happy to set up a Zoom conversation with you. My email is at the bottom, and thank you. Good luck with the rest of the presentations, and have a great day. Thank you.